Disclaimer: this content is for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. I never imagined I'd find myself in a situation like this. It started on an ordinary evening, just me at home, my husband away on a work trip, and a quiet house that suddenly didn't feel so comforting. I was used to these short trips of his, but something about this time felt different. Maybe it was the silence, or maybe it was the unexpected knock at the door that would change everything. Standing there was my husband's best friend, Jake. We'd known each other for years. He was like family. But that night, something about his expression caught me off guard. He looked uneasy, hesitant, almost as if he had something on his mind but wasn't sure how to say it. "Hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know this is kinda out of the blue, but can we talk?" There was a weight in his voice, something unspoken that lingered between us. Of course, I let him in, thinking it was just gonna be a casual chat. Maybe he needed advice, or maybe he just wanted to check in since he knew I was alone. But the moment he sat down, I could tell. This wasn't just a friendly visit. As we talked, the air in the room shifted. What started as a harmless conversation about my husband quickly turned into something else. A question, a request, something I never expected to hear from him. And in that moment, I had a choice to make. Before I continue, I want to know, what would you do in my position? Have you ever been caught in a moment where a simple conversation took an unexpected turn? Let me know in the comments. And if you think you know what happens next, drop your guesses below. Stay tuned because this story is just getting started. I sat across from Jake, watching as he took a deep breath, his fingers tapping lightly on the edge of the coffee table. The hesitation in his eyes only made my heart beat faster. I wasn't sure if it was nervousness or something else, something unspoken, lingering in the air between us. "I know this is gonna sound strange," he started, his voice quieter now, as if he was unsure whether to even say it out loud. "But I need a favor." A favor. That was all he said at first. But the way he looked at me, almost studying my reaction, made me realize there was more to it than just a simple request. My mind raced with possibilities. What could he possibly need from me while my husband was away? I shifted in my seat, suddenly aware of how quiet the house was. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the only sound filling the space. "Okay," I said slowly. "What kind of favor?" Jake sighed, leaning forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important," he said, shaking his head as if debating whether to continue. "It's just, there's something I need help with, and I don't know who else to turn to." His words sent a chill through me, not out of fear, but out of curiosity. Jake was a confident guy, always the one cracking jokes, the one my husband trusted more than anyone. Seeing him like this, uneasy, almost vulnerable, was new to me, and that alone made me listen even more carefully. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Jake, just tell me, what is it?" For a moment, he didn't speak. He just stared down at his hands as if trying to find the right way to explain. Then, finally, he looked up at me, his eyes serious. "It's about your husband," he said. The second those words left his mouth, my stomach tightened. I felt a sudden rush of emotions, concern, confusion, and a flicker of something else I couldn't quite place. Was something wrong? Did something happen? A dozen possibilities filled my mind, none of them settling well. I opened my mouth to ask him to explain, but before I could, he glanced toward the front window, as if making sure we were really alone. That's when he said something that sent a shiver down my spine. "You might not like what I have to tell you." And just like that, everything changed. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. My hands tightened around the mug in front of me. though I wasn't even drinking from it anymore. My mind was too busy racing, trying to figure out what Jake could possibly mean. What do you mean? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Is something wrong with him? Jake hesitated, then shook his head. Not exactly, he said. It's just, I don't know if I should be the one telling you this. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. But at the same time, I feel like you have the right to know. His words sent another chill through me. The right to know? My heart pounded. I could tell he was struggling, debating whether to say more or leave it at that. And the way he kept avoiding my eyes only made it worse. I shifted forward, trying to keep my voice steady. Jake, if there's something I should know about my own husband, you have to tell me. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head again. Look, I don't want to cause problems. I don't want to come between you two. The tension was unbearable now. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. Jake, I said firmly, just tell me what's going on. Finally, he looked me in the eye. I think he's hiding something from you. My stomach dropped. I blinked, trying to process what he'd just said. What? I breathed. I don't have proof, he added quickly. But I've seen things, heard things. He sighed. I wasn't going to say anything, but the more I think about it, the more I feel like you deserve to know. A million thoughts ran through my head. My husband and I had always been open with each other, or at least I thought we had. But now doubt started creeping in. Was there something he wasn't telling me? Something serious enough for Jake to come here and warn me? I swallowed hard. What exactly have you seen? Jake hesitated again, his jaw tightening. A few weeks ago, he was supposed to meet me for lunch, he said. Last minute, he canceled, said he was stuck in a meeting. But later, I saw him, and he wasn't at work. My pulse quickened. Where was he? Jake hesitated. He was with someone? Silence. I felt like the ground beneath me had suddenly become unstable. With who? Jake exhaled, looking at me carefully. A woman, he said, and it didn't look like a work meeting. The words hit me like a wave. I wanted to dismiss it, to find a reasonable explanation, but the look on Jake's face told me he wasn't making this up. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice shaking slightly. Because I care about you, he said softly, and I don't want you to get hurt. I didn't know what to say. A part of me didn't want to believe it, but another part, the part that knew Jake wouldn't lie about something like this, was terrified that he might be right. Now I had a choice to make. What would you do in my position? Would you confront him, ignore it, or try to find out the truth first? Let me know in the comments. And trust me, this is just the beginning. A cold wave rushed over me as Jake's words sank in. My husband, the man I trusted more than anyone, might be hiding something. I wanted to ask 100 questions at once. Who was she? Where were they? What exactly did Jake see? But my throat felt tight, my mind spinning with possibilities I wasn't ready to face. Jake watched me carefully, as if trying to read my emotions. I know this is a lot, he said. And I don't want to jump to conclusions, but something about the way they were acting, it didn't sit right with me. I forced myself to take a deep breath, but it didn't help. My fingers gripped the fabric of my sweater, grounding myself. You're sure it was him? I asked, needing to hear it one more time. Jake nodded. I'd recognize him anywhere. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely think. My husband had been distant lately, preoccupied. I'd told myself it was just work stress, nothing more. But now, doubts clawed at me. Had I been ignoring the signs? I swallowed hard. Did you see them together again after that? Jake hesitated. Not in person, he admitted. But a few days later, I saw something on his phone. I didn't mean to, but he was texting someone. He got weird when he noticed me looking. A sharp sting hit my chest. My husband wasn't the type to hide things from me, or so I thought. But if he was acting secretive, if he was lying about where he was, then what else was he keeping from me? My stomach twisted. I needed to know the truth. But how? Should I ask him outright? Pretend I didn't know and watch his behavior? Or should I go looking for answers myself? Jake leaned forward. Listen, I'm not saying you should assume the worst. Maybe there's an explanation, but if it were me, I'd want to know for sure. I nodded slowly, my mind already racing with possibilities. I couldn't ignore this, not now. What would you do if you were in my position? Would you confront him, wait for more proof, or dig deeper on your own? Let me know in the comments. And trust me, things are about to take a turn you won't see coming. I barely slept that night. My mind wouldn't stop racing, replaying Jake's words over and over. Every glance, every late night call, every moment my husband had seemed distracted. It all felt different now, like pieces of a puzzle I'd been too blind to put together. I kept telling myself there had to be an explanation. There had to be. But I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my gut. The next morning, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to sit back and wait for answers to come to me. If there was something to uncover, I needed to find it myself. I waited until late afternoon, when I knew my husband would still be at work. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for his laptop on the desk. He wasn't overly protective of his devices, but lately, I had noticed he closed his screen whenever I walked by. My heart pounded as I lifted the lid and typed in the password. Wrong. I tried again. Wrong. I swallowed hard. He had changed it. A lump formed in my throat. My husband wasn't the type to lock me out of anything, but now, with everything Jake had told me, it felt like proof that something wasn't right. My mind raced with thoughts of what he could be hiding, messages, emails, something. Just as I was about to give up, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down and froze. A new message from my husband. Hey, stuck in another meeting. Probably won't be home for dinner. Love you. A familiar excuse? Too familiar. My fingers hovered over the screen before an idea hit me. I opened our shared phone plan app, my hands shaky as I scrolled through the call logs. That's when I saw it. A number I didn't recognize. Repeated calls. At odd hours. The most recent one? Just 30 minutes ago. My stomach dropped. I tapped the number, hesitating for only a second before hitting dial. The phone rang. Once, twice, my pulse pounded. Then someone picked up, but they didn't speak. I could hear breathing on the other end, soft but deliberate. I stayed silent too, my grip tightening on the phone. The seconds stretched, the tension thick between us. Then, finally, a voice. A woman's voice. Hello? My breath caught in my throat. I didn't recognize her, but the way she spoke, cautious, hesitant, like she wasn't sure who was calling, made my blood run cold. I didn't know what to say. Should I ask who she was? Should I hang up? My mind was spinning. But before I could do anything, she spoke again. Is this him? I froze. My heart nearly stopped. Him? She thought I was my husband. I felt my stomach twist as I quickly ended the call, my hands shaking. This was worse than I thought. So much worse. Now, I had no choice. I had to find out the truth. What would you do if you were in my position? Would you call her back, confront him, or dig even deeper? Let me know in the comments because, trust me, this story is far from over. My hands were still shaking as I stared at my phone. The woman on the other end, whoever she was, thought I was him, my husband. The realization sent a wave of nausea through me. This wasn't just some misunderstanding. This was real. And now I needed answers. I didn't wait. I grabbed my keys and headed out, my pulse racing as I drove. I didn't even know exactly where I was going. I just knew I had to see my husband now. If he was lying to me, if he was with her, I wasn't going to sit around wondering. My mind played out different scenarios as I made my way toward his office. What if he wasn't there? What if I caught him in the middle of something I wasn't ready to see? My fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter. I had to be strong. When I pulled up, I scanned the parking lot, and my stomach clenched. His car wasn't there. I felt a lump form in my throat. If he wasn't at work, then where was he? My heart pounded as I reached for my phone and redialed the unknown number. It rang, once, twice, then, hello? The same woman's voice. I took a breath, steadying myself. Who is this? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. A pause, then she sighed. I was wondering when you'd call back, she said. I froze. What? She hesitated. Look, I don't know what he's told you, but you deserve to know the truth. Everything in me went cold. Where is he? I demanded. Another pause. Then she gave me an address. I didn't even think. I just turned the car around and drove. My heart pounded harder with every mile, my mind racing with every possible explanation. When I finally reached the location, a small cafe on the other side of town, I spotted him instantly. There he was, sitting at a corner table, and across from him, the woman. I could barely breathe as I got out of the car and walked toward them. My husband looked up, his eyes widening when he saw me. What are you doing here? He asked, sounding startled. I ignored him and turned to the woman. Who are you? I demanded. She looked between us, then exhaled. I'm his sister. The words hit me like a brick. I blinked. His what? My husband sighed, rubbing his face. I was going to tell you, he said. I just didn't know how. Shock washed over me. In all our years together, he had never once mentioned having a sister. Not once. She nodded. I know it's a lot, she said softly. But it's true. We just found each other a few months ago. I was adopted as a baby. He wanted to meet me before telling you. I felt my legs go weak as I sat down. I had been preparing for the worst, and yet I still wasn't sure how to process this. The lies, the secrecy, the doubt. I looked at my husband, emotions swirling inside me. Why didn't you tell me? He sighed again. Because I was scared, he admitted. Scared of how you'd react, scared of opening that part of my life. I exhaled, the tension still heavy between us. This wasn't what I expected, but it didn't change the fact that he had lied, that he had let me believe the worst instead of trusting me with the truth. Now I had another choice to make. Would I forgive him? Could I trust him again? Or was this just the beginning of even more secrets? What would you do? Let me know in the comments, because even though I finally have my answers, I'm still not sure how this story ends. I sat there for what felt like forever, staring at my husband, his sister, and the weight of everything that had just unfolded. The rush of emotions, relief, anger, confusion, hit me all at once. A part of me wanted to be furious. How could he keep something this big from me? But another part of me, the part that had spent the last 24 hours believing my marriage was falling apart, felt something else entirely. I had braced myself for betrayal, for heartbreak. Instead, I was faced with a truth I never could have expected. It didn't erase the lies, but it did change what I thought I knew. I took a deep breath, my voice quieter now. I wish you had just told me from the beginning. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. I know, he said softly, and I'm sorry. I should have trusted you with this. His sister nodded, looking just as emotional. I didn't want to cause problems between you two, she added. I just wanted to meet my brother. I studied them both, my heart still heavy, but the anger fading. This wasn't what I expected, but it was real. And maybe, just maybe, this was something we could move forward from. The drive home was quiet. I didn't say much, and neither did he. But his hand found mine on the center console, and this time I didn't pull away. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought about everything. Trust wasn't just about honesty, it was about feeling safe with someone, knowing that no matter what, they wouldn't keep you in the dark. My husband had failed me in that, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore the truth. He hadn't been unfaithful. He hadn't betrayed our marriage. I turned to face him in the dim light. "No more secrets," I whispered. He nodded, his expression sincere. "No more secrets. Maybe we weren't perfect. Maybe we still had a lot to work through." But as I drifted off to sleep, for the first time in days, I felt something close to peace. Now, I want to hear from you. Would you be able to forgive him? Or would this kind of secret be too much to move past? Let me know in the comments, and if you want to hear what happens next, make sure to subscribe, because this might not be the end of the story.